All right, I guess we'll get started. It is about 2:30. So this session is Research in the Real World, Accessibility, Nurturing Usage, and Turning Theory into Practice. My name is Mike Groth. I am the marketing manager for the North America region at Emerald Group Publishing. And connecting ideas to practice is an issue that is close to the heart of Emerald. Our corporate mantra has been to create and measure impact both inside and outside of academia. So whether you want to describe that as making abstract ideas applicable or connecting theory to relevance, taking esoteric thinking, talking points circulating in academia and bringing them to wider understanding, or even just measuring the ROI of research investment, this is a very important topic to us. So I'm very proud to have an exciting panel here today that represents 3 people and 4 different perspectives, at least, along the information chain of scholarly publishing and communication. The author as creator through to the publisher as packager and disseminator. The librarian as selector and a bridge builder to users, and even an industry practitioner who serves as the ultimate end user. So I will, without further ado, make introductions. Again, my name is Mike, and I'm in marketing at Emerald. I will moderate the discussion. I've been with the company for about a year. Some of you may remember me from Ingenta, Publishers Communication Group, New England Journal of Medicine, and various other dark corners of scholarly publishing. And to my left is my colleague, Patti Davis. She is our publisher. She manages various lists of journals in the company, from operations, logistics, and quality to enterprise and innovation. And she's also spent time as an acquisition editor at Rowman & Littlefield. To her left is Matthew Ismail. He is Director of Collection Development at Central Michigan University. He spent, interestingly, many years working in libraries around the Middle East, but germane to this discussion especially, he is the author of the Marketing Academic Libraries column in Against the Grain magazine. And finally, we have Professor Tom Kent. He is chair of the Department of Management and Entrepreneurship at the School of Business here at the College of Charleston. He's also an editorial advisory board member of Emerald's Leadership and Organization Development Journal. He's a frequent author and reviewer for Emerald, and he's also worked extensively in industry, so he represents perspectives from author, gatekeeper, through to practitioner. So the way this will work, we only really have 40 minutes. I will give each presenter time to present their perspective along the information chain connecting research and practice. And then after about 5 to 8 minutes for each of them, I will ask a series of questions and open it up to the floor. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Patti.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mike. I'm very pleased to be here, but before I get into the meat of what I want to say, I do need to fly the flag a little bit. I'm with Emerald Group Publishing. It was founded in West Yorkshire in 1967 by a group of academics at the University of Bradford, and we're now a global institution, but still a family business, which is something we're all very proud of. We have a range of digital products, a portfolio of 300 journals, more than 2,500 books, and 450 teaching cases. As Mike said, one of the academics that formed the nascent company remains as our chief executive officer today, and his ethos continues to be the guiding force of the company, which is publishing content that is useful in the business world. And how that plays out in the real world is something that I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about. I want to set the stage for what I see as what we're trying to accomplish today and the landscape that we're operating in that directly impacts the type of research we publish. So when I first entered academia, and even before I was born, the discussion of research to practice has been part of the landscape. And it is an old academic truism that there's nothing more practical than a good theory. And when I first came to the discussion, and some of you may remember the Reagan years, and when I first started in my career, it was not uncommon to hear things like, oh my God, they pay for that research. I could have told them that for free. And And we still hear that today. And recently, there was published research that actually was published by Emerald that said that bringing your dog to work was really good for reducing stress. And we heard again, oh, I could have told them that for free. And indeed, I could have told them that because that's my dog, Sophie, and she came to work with me every day at the time of that. So she now goes to work with my partner every day, but she's an office dog. We've moved beyond that a little bit of I could have told them that for free sort of mentality, but I think there's been research that shows there is an inverse relationship between journals and what they're publishing and what is actually applied and necessary for the world. And practitioners often accuse researchers of theorizing from an ivory tower and with little regard for how things are used in the real world. And in fact, a recent research shows that CEOs who took a look at samples of the most downloaded research articles in their field said that those articles were very little use to their day-to-day life. So how social science journals, and particularly business journals, which I am most familiar with, try to bridge that gap, and sometimes that gap is actually more like a chasm. So it's a tricky road to follow. One of the biggest trends that I've personally witnessed over the years is how articles are written. And in my early career, articles were written so poorly that their points were just clouded in a mire of poor grammar and jargon, so that in so many ways they weren't decipherable. And I'm happy to see that academic writing has improved tremendously, but don't throw tomatoes at me. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's just not. It's not as bad as it was. And at least this culture of obtuseness I don't see in academic writing anymore. I'm also seeing some other things that I think are really good for trying to reach out to practitioners. Scholars are partnering with practitioners early in their research process, before forming even the questions that they're going to look at, and not just looking to find a practitioner after the research is done to write with. And I think that's probably the most important thing to get to the point of having research that's applicable. And editors, another point is editors are requiring authors to include sections of their papers that are implications for implications for practice. And this can still lead to those ivory tower implications, but by getting researchers early in their career to start thinking about how their research is applicable is a good thing, because I really don't think that academics go into the field to publish research that is not applicable. They want to do research that's useful and betters our society, and I truly believe that, and that's why I'm in academic publishing as well. So some things that Emerald does specifically that helps this along the way is we publish structured abstracts that are in front of the paywall, so anybody has access to them, and they're easy for the implications to practice are in there, and along with all the other lit review things, but it's structured and easy to get at. We also seek out alliances with associations and societies and that have practitioner members, and we have those practitioners sit on the editorial advisory board, and then they get free access to the journal and can summarize the research that's in the journal to put into their society and association newsletters. So that's what Emerald is doing. On a broader level, we participate in Kudos, which is a program that helps scholars put information into easily plain language, a software service that does that, and then provides links in email and other social media, and even Facebook, or just to irritate my children, I'll call it the Facebook. And that is easily trackable, what is used from those sources. And you know what somebody a lot smarter than me said once was, what is measured gets done. And if they can measure the impact of these types of altmetrics, then I think it also gets them starting to think about how it's applicable for practitioners. So these last three examples are specifically designed to work around the problem that research is still, for the most part, in the social sciences behind paywalls. Plus, it's too long to read, too steeped in a shroud of mystery over, jargon still. And these kudos and metrics can get straight to the point, not having to deal with things like the lit review and even the findings, for that matter, or the methods. So even with all of that I see as positive, I think we're at a crossroads. Practitioners don't have part of their job description to write for academic journals, and researchers aren't given tenure based on how many practitioners use their research or how much their research is applicable for practice. So we've taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 1 step forward and 2 steps back, depending on your perspective. And the case in point to this is academia's reliance on impact factors to judge the impact of an article. Academia has systematically ceded control of research to Web of Science, to the point where schools are developing lists of approved journals to publish in, and those journals are devoid of any regard for niche topics or specialty fields or outreach to practitioners. And then we're doubling down on that. Scopus is coming out with a new metric that's going to be very similar to the impact factor. And Clarivet Analytics, which now owns Web of Science, has developed a new core database that's going to drastically alter the impact factors. So if we're going to move forward so that people leave school feeling like they actually learned something that they're going to use in their day-to-day life and continue to read research as part of their daily work life, then we're going to need all of publishers, librarians, and academics need to work together to do that. Up.
Great, thank you, Patti. And next up, Matthew.
All right, I have, with my usual impeccable planning, neglected to print off my presentation, so I'll sort of be looking down at this presentation on my computer, which suggests why it was such a boon to me that they hired me an assistant. So we can say, you have a meeting, you have to go now. Things like this. All right, so what I'm going to talk about really is just how it is. Should I go down one?
Down arrow.
Down arrow?
Is it this one?
Yeah.
There we are.
And then you can...
One more. All right. So what I'm going to talk about is really just how it is, as librarians, we can make the transition of the materials to which we subscribe to the users work more effectively. Because when it comes down to it these days, we've got a lot of competition. We don't, when I was an undergraduate, you go to the library if you want anything to do your research, because it wasn't available everywhere. These days, people can get their information in all kinds of different places. They can go to data that's published by NGOs or by governments. They can go to preprint archives. They can go to OA journals. They can go to I know faculty where I work at CMU who still have access to the materials from their doctoral institutions. There are even sites like Sci-Hub, right? I mean, Sci-Hub, whether it's a pirate site or a site that liberates information, it depends who you are. But all of these are competition for the people like us who are intermediaries between publishers and users. So what kinds of things can you do to make this transition from publishers to users more effective? Well, you can, for instance, have I got that? Yes. You can do promotion. Now, promotion is like this. We have the Chronicle of Higher Education online with a campus site license. But I would like to remind you that promotion and marketing are not the same thing. When I started at my job, this was our marketing campaign. We have the Chronicle. We have JSTOR. We have EBSCO. They used to say to me, you have to market the resources so that people know we have them. And this was the result. But an awareness campaign is not marketing. An awareness campaign is just that. It's saying, we have the Chronicle. The marketing is more like embedding your communication with your users in the expressed needs and desires of those users, right? So it's a product of understanding your users first. It's not saying, by the way, we know what you need, and we're going to tell you what you need. It's going to people and getting a good feel for what they're doing and who they are and what they want and what they need. And promotion has no real emotional content, right? Promotion is very much a statement. Marketing has an emotional charge. Marketing is, we'll save you time. Marketing is, we'll be part of your success. We're listening to you. We're online and accessible 24/7. All these sorts of things that we say because we've been talking to people who are pressed for time and really want convenience and ease of use. We want to be part of your success because we know they're not getting this degree just because they're curious. They want to be successful in life. When we say we're listening to you, it's because we know that people are very much concerned that they be heard. So just remember, promotion is fine. It's good. Not everyone knows that we have a campus site license to the Chronicle. And it's not a hard sell once they know. But that isn't really, when we started to do some marketing, we did it, pardon me while I scroll a bit. What we did was not just an awareness campaign. We talked to people and found out that they were concerned, all right, you have all online resources, but I don't want to carry my laptop around all over the place. I really wish I could use my iPad. Well, when we started our browsing campaign, we didn't just say, we have browsing. We got all of the subject librarians to start talking to people in the university about how we're not just a source for information, we're also an up-to-date online 24/7 service whose response to you is you can use whatever instrument is best suited to your needs. So when we started talking about browsing, we were talking to them about their needs, about their success, about how we're up to date, how we're keeping up to date with what they need. So we're not just about books, we're not just about the collections, we're also about providing access to what you really need, because browsing also gives access to open access journals. So that's just a way to start making sure that your users are plugged in and clued in to the fact that you're not just there to buy books for them. You're part of their success. You're part of, the things that you want them to believe and that they want from you. Well, we also, in addition to doing marketing and to doing promotion, we started going out to the deans and the associate deans and telling them all the sorts of things we do for them. So if you look at this slide, you can't probably see the details, but one of the issues we have, for instance, and everybody has this, we fund STEM areas with a lot more money than we fund humanities areas. And we get a lot of dissatisfaction, particularly from the humanities people, with this fact. So what we tried to do was tell all the deans how much it costs to support different areas. So when you look at this slide, one of the slides is the average cost of a journal in a discipline. So when we say to them, all right, we're given 10 times more money to support chemistry than we are to support art history. It also happens to cost 10 times more to buy one journal in chemistry as it does in art history. The result of that is we buy one journal in chemistry, it's $2,000. We buy one journal in art history, it's $200. That is equal support. But we have no real choice about the charge that is being made for it. Now, that doesn't stop people being upset, but it does change the conversation from you care more about STEM than you do about the humanities to, well, I still want more money, which you can always go back to, that's not going to work because. And we also brought in, trends in services and so on. So this kind of specific discussions with the leadership in the different colleges about what we do for them and why what we do is important to what they do is also wrapped up with going out, talking to them, and saying, and what do you need? I mean, what new programs do you have? How are these resources working for you? And so on. And finally, when I arrived at CMU, we just renewed all the resources, basically, unless somebody came and said, I don't want this. Right? So there was just this sort of annual renewal process that was not that much embedded in discussions with the faculty. Now, tools available to us to gather data and sort it and all that have improved tremendously. So whereas a few years ago, a colleague of mine took, I think it was 6 months to put together what I now do in about 3 weeks, to put all the usage data for each subscribed resource into a subject-based worksheet with usage, with cost per use, all that, and go every time, every year, when we have subscription renewal or cancellation, we go and say to the faculty, are these the journals and other resources to which we subscribe on an annual basis that you need in your area? And if not, What do you need? So that we never have this problem that we're renewing things over and over and over again, and people come and say, you know, this guy left in 2004. I don't know why you're still subscribing to the journals that support his research. That should all be taken care of every year. And this is just part of what I am saying is what you need to do to make sure that your processes for subscribing and maintaining resources are embedded in the people that you work with at the university, the faculty and the students. So I think that is about good.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Tom?
Hello. I'm more or less a quasi-academician. I've spent most of my life in industry. And the reason this subject resonates with me is because when I left my prestigious university, having somehow been granted a PhD, and I joined the first corporation that I worked for, I was immediately struck by the lack of application of all the things I had learned in my PhD studies and what this corporation was doing. But what was even more alarming is that this corporation, and subsequently as I learned through networking with other companies were far down the road in terms of using new methods, applying new thought to my field at least, which is management. Then when I made the leap to academia about 15 years ago, I wondered, how can I help this situation? It was hard to think about it because I didn't know which was the chicken and which was the egg. Which was producing which? What part of the problem did academia versus the corporation own? And having difficulty answering that, I thought, well, I can only do what I can do. And so I thought, well, whatever I do from an academic standpoint, from a research standpoint, it has to deal with stuff that matters to organizations, whether they be for profit or not for profit. I have to be able to create useful knowledge. So I began a stream of research that took 15 years. Of interest to me was leadership, and I resonated with a subject called transformational leadership, which at the time, when I made that leap, was just a theoretical construct. Not a whole lot of research was done to specifically say, what is it and how can we apply it? So that's where I decided to lend a hand, if you will, to this subject. So what I set out to do was to build a questionnaire that industry could use to assess the leadership in their own organization and to potentially train their leaders in how to become better leaders. I thought that would be useful. I thought that would be practical. And I proceeded to do that. We developed a questionnaire. It described what made up good leaders or what good leaders do. And we validated it in 5 different cultures. And so now I have an instrument that says we can help you to understand the quality of your leadership, and it applies to all your employees around the globe. Actually, organization leaders like that idea. I think what made the difference is that the work was all done within organizations. We didn't use subjects like students and non-employees. We used all employees. So I think that is an important first step, is to partner with organizations to develop your ideas and your research. But there are a couple of other things you can do once you've got a product. And these are some ideas, examples. You could put your citation or keywords on your email address. You can put it on your social media pages. You could notify non-academic special interest groups of the work you're doing. But I think at base, the importance is to do something that organizations, whether they be profit or nonprofit, can use, and then help them to use it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, panel. So we have just under 10 minutes, and I have a few questions, and I want to make sure we get to the audience. But first, I want to ask anybody who's willing to jump in, since each of us represents a different link in the information chain, from your perspective, what is it the other stakeholders sitting on this panel could do to help you bridge the gap between theory and practice, or between authors and users? So in other words, what do you need the other people here to do differently or better to help you meet your ends or to help further the goal?
Oh.
How's that for passing the
That's
bar?
cool, that's good. I really think that one of the things that has made the process work best for the librarians making resources available to researchers is our liaison process. It's having a regular set of discussions with them and learning precisely what is going on in the departments, what sort of research is going on in those departments, what kinds of classes do they teach, what sorts of assignments do they make. Are these resources the ones you actually need? Just because we've been subscribing to this doesn't mean we have to continue subscribing to this. And that really is very similar to the kinds of conversations librarians need to have with publishers, publishers needs to have with librarians, but also all of us need to have these conversations with researchers. And I think the librarians in the past have been somewhat guilty of managing the resources we have and not really talking to people as much as we need to. So that would be my response, is everybody need to be in contact with each other and not act as a self-sustaining entity. You wanna, I don't know.
No? Okay. All right, one more question for now. So we talked a lot about creation of actionable research, but there's a lot of information out there already. How do we differentiate between abstract and actionable research already out there? If we're talking to students or sitting on a conference panel, what are the best indicators that published research is something that could be used beyond academia? This one might be for a good one for Patti. Anything that Emerald does that we can differentiate ourselves that we haven't talked about already?
Well, we did talk about the implications for practice, which is getting differentiated, having networks that go beyond just the scholarly network and out into the practice field, I think is important for researchers to do as well. And then not worry about, sometimes I think researchers feel like they can't disseminate their work because it is behind a paywall, and they can disseminate parts of their work. They can just talk about it like you would at a cocktail party. There's nothing that says you can't blog about it or anything like that, and doing that in the practitioner, former students and those types of people who have gone out into the workforce to stay connected to it, and doing research, as you said, one of the most astounding things I discovered is how much students are used as the research subjects. I'm just still astounded by that happening. And so why you have all of the scholars have this huge resource of former students, keep that as their own personal database if they need to have subjects for researchers and not use students.
Good. We've been, Emerald, talking about this topic all year in different capacities, and one comment that came up during a panel before was that sometimes the popular media picks up on scholarly research, but usually only the most sensational or the most flawed or not necessarily the most appropriate or useful research. An example was this year, don't hug your dog, again with the dogs. It causes them stress. And this was a paper published, but it got wide acclaim on the news at 11. Don't hug your dog, you're stressing him out. But on a more serious note, can anybody give any examples of research or even scholarly resources that they've run across that should have gotten wider attention, either within industry or the general public, that could have made a difference if only it was presented and communicated more effectively?
My own.
There you go. I was going to suggest that if you want.
No, I think what makes research applicable is the application of it. And what I found is that, at least for my own purposes, that organizations are eager to work with researchers if the subject is right. So I think I'll just make that comment. I have found in my own research that organizations are willing to cooperate, are willing to use their own resources to conduct the research. In my case, I had a questionnaire that needed to be validated. I had several organizations willing to work with me. As long as the results of the research were provided to them, and as long as it had some use to them. In my case, we applied performance data versus, or in correlation with leadership styles, and then we trained those very leaders using the instrument that we were developing. And I had no trouble finding for-profit organizations who were willing to contribute and cooperate in that basis.
Good. I think we have time for one or two audience questions. So, Scott, do you mind standing up to the microphone? If anyone would like to ask a question at the microphone, please.
This is for Matthew. You were talking about you used to just renew what you always had. And admittedly, I'm a publisher. So, and you're right, sometimes the researchers who are there have moved on years that you weren't notified that through the normal whatever communications were. We sometimes struggle. We started talking to faculty more as a publisher, not just to the libraries. But some librarians don't like us doing that because it sends people to your door. So we want to play by the rules of engagement, but we have schools that have 200 authors that aren't subscribing to our content. How would you suggest we go about definitely walking that fine line of trying to make sure that the research from our authors is there without sending too many people to your door? Fair question?
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's totally fair question. The thing that we have to struggle with is not so much the amount of good research that we could have access to, as that when you go tell faculty, we've got this wonderful thing, they don't come to us and say, cancel all this other stuff, we want this. They want that too. And so really, I think that publishers talking to faculty is good. It's a good idea because the faculty don't often talk to us. And
We noticed that.
yeah, yeah. No, it's certainly true. And so I think I don't have any problem with that. It creates a certain number of uncomfortable conversations because I have to tell people often, look, I know this is great, but I don't have $20,000, you know, or I don't have $10,000, whatever it is. Do you want to cancel $10,000 worth of stuff so we can get this? And the answer is always no. So my only objection is that it points people to more good stuff that I can't get. And that's just the nature of the publishing arrangement. When things are open access, it's a different conversation because they can get it when they want it. It's when there's a subscription base, which is most of what we do. I think it's, 75%, 80%. So, yeah, I think when publishers talk to faculty and get a better idea of what faculty want, that's exactly what I do.
Well, that's ultimately what we would like to do, because ultimately you're trying to get the best portfolio of research you can get versus just staying with what you've always had because it kept you within budget.
Yep.
So it's got to be evolutionary instead of revolutionary, I would say.
All right, good. Any last questions from the audience before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.